Welcome to my channel and to the second episode of the Design with Me series. This video series allows us to spend more time together creating visuals, featuring longer videos with minimal editing. This way, you can see my entire creative process in real time and also discover some tips and tricks I use to turn my ideas into a cool and creative final visual. For this second episode, we'll be working on a visual in a graphic style called Brutalism with inspirations I found on Pinterest. We'll use a red and black base with an impactful, somewhat aggressive visual that mixes organic and geometric shapes. The main idea of my design and the overall theme of this episode is a representation of anger, hostility, and hatred within that lexical field. The entire visual will be created mainly in Photoshop, except for a few aesthetic elements that I created in Illustrator and will import into Photoshop. Also, a quick announcement. I will be using graphic elements from a pack of vector shapes that I created myself, which are available for free download. The link is in the description. Get comfortable, and let's dive into this second episode of Design with Me. So we're starting in Photoshop, and we'll set up a canvas of 3,000 pixels wide and 3,500 pixels high. I'll set the resolution to 300 dpi. We're in RGB mode, and I'll start with a black background. Our workspace will match the size of our visual, which is roughly the size of a poster or a print. To begin with our first element, which will perfectly symbolize the idea I want to convey: anger, aggressiveness, something hateful. I generated this image earlier today, which I find very interesting. It represents anger and danger, and at the same time, it has a part of distorted illusion, which can be associated with these negative emotions. Something somewhat intangible, unreal. I find the visual impactful on its own, but we're not going to stop there. We'll try to enhance its style and the impact it can have. Before starting, the first thing I notice, and that will bother me later, is that at the top here, a small part of the ear is missing for the visual to be perfect. To fix this, we will take a piece of the ear from somewhere else. To complete it here and here, I think this piece will work very well. So with the lasso tool, shortcut L, we will manually select a piece, press Ctrl+C, then Ctrl+V to duplicate my shape, and with Ctrl+T, I will move my ear here and make sure it matches. I press Enter, and with the eraser tool, using reduced hardness and a slightly larger size, I will erase a little to make it more coherent. There, and to complete this little part here, we will take this one. Similarly, Ctrl+C, then Ctrl+V to duplicate my shape, and with Ctrl+T, we will distort it to make it match the area here. The goal is not to make it perfect, you will understand. We will use a filter that will ultra-texture the visual, so the small inconsistencies will be barely visible. This famous effect I want to use is called threshold. If you don't have it, go to Window and find Adjustments here. The threshold effect is there, and you just have to click on it. So, using a black background was not a good idea. I will change it to white. Okay, as you can see, the image is well damaged and is in black and white. The threshold effect will emphasize the colors so that they are black and white, and will have a very pixelated look with very rough edges. This is the idea I am looking for, something raw and impactful. And as we can see, the montage we did on the ears is not noticeable. Now we will try to adjust this effect a little better. By adjusting the bar, we can display a bit more detail and bring out a bit more white. This seems fine to me, but we can't see enough detail in the teeth, which will bother me for the rest of my visual, I think. So we will apply this effect in several parts. To begin, we will finish creating the layer below that we created. I will select my 3 layers, right-click, and convert them to a smart object. which groups them into a single layer. We'll have a good base that we want to preserve. I'll select my effect and my layer of the beast. Take them and drag them to the little plus sign at the bottom to duplicate them. I'll hide the ones below and we'll go back to the threshold effect. So if we want to see the teeth a bit more, we'll increase the effects bar a bit more. That way, I'll reveal the layers below so that it gives an idea. We'll select our two layers and put them in a group. To make things easier, we'll use the lasso tool and roughly select the area we're interested in, so only the teeth. Select the group and press on their mask. As we can see, we have a different mouth that's a bit more visible. What will happen here is that I'll take my brush tool, set the hardness to maximum, increase its size a bit, and directly rework what we want to keep or not. So I'll come here to erase for more detail. A little tip if you want to easily change between black and white colors. Black will erase, as we can see here on the layer, and white will reveal what was masked on the layer. To easily switch, just press the X key on the keyboard, which will swap the two colors. This allows for faster work. I'll speed up the process a bit, so it won't be too long for you. I'll get back to you afterward. I think we're pretty good. We'll stick with this. So again, on the brush here, we see a pixelated effect. And here, as I erased it a bit, it's less pixelated. To keep this very raw effect, I'll add another threshold layer on top. And now, look at the difference. There, we get back the pixelated look. This is the end of our first work on our visual. We'll select all our layers and convert them into a smart object, giving us a single black and white layer. I'll reposition it a bit like this. It looks better this way. We'll continue working on the image, and I'd like to degrade it a bit more and add an illusion effect, something that draws the eye to the center of the beast's gaze, as if it's staring at us, like there's a shock effect, as if it's roaring at us. Since it has an open mouth, we could think of it as a roar. So we need to create an effect that is, let's say, wave-like, still in a damaged style, with a very raw rendering. For this, I'll reduce my image a bit, like this. It's quite special because as I'm doing something round, the spot where I want the center of my effect needs to be really at the center of my image. To make things easier, I'll click on the layer. I'll copy it with Ctrl+C, then Ctrl+N, to open a new workspace in Photoshop. As we can see here, we already have a square format. I'll set it to 3000 pixels by 3000 pixels. In this new space, I'll do a Ctrl+V to paste my visual. We'll set the background to white, and with a Ctrl+T, I'll reposition my image so that the beast's eye is well centered. To help me do it correctly, I'll display Photoshop's rulers. To do this, I'll press Ctrl+R. We can see that the little rulers appear at the top and left of our workspace. I'll click on the top ruler and drag it to the center of my layer, like this. And once it's magnetized, look, you see, it means it's in the middle of my workspace. Then I just let go. This way, we see a blue guide appears. We'll do the same on the left side. And once we feel a bit of magnetism, there, we can let go. It's a simple trick to position our image correctly and surely in the center. I'll select my image, do a Ctrl+T, and we want the eye to be at the center of the visual. We're pretty good like this. I'll enlarge it a bit and center it with the arrow keys. Reposition it manually. Here, it looks pretty good to me. Finally, we'll be able to handle the famous effect I was talking about to add more intensity to the visual and more texture. To ensure there are no problems, I convert everything into a smart object. I do a Ctrl+A to select the entire area, Ctrl plus C, Ctrl plus V. This makes our layer exactly the size of our workspace. We will convert it into a smart object because the effect we will add on top can be modified. We will go to Filters and Filter Galleries. I zoom out a little. So here, it doesn't look like anything, which is normal. I had other effects displayed by default, so I'll remove them. In this new panel that has opened, we will find lots of effect layers organized in folders. On the right, we will find a list of our different effects, like our layer column in Photoshop. And in the upper right, there is the settings area for our effects. We will start with the first effect to add, which will be reticulation. This effect creates a kind of grain and noise on my image. I will quickly adjust it. For now, what we want is not the final render immediately, so we won't fine-tune each setting little by little, but rather all at once they are all combined. To add a new layer, we will click on the small plus at the bottom to add a new effect layer. This actually duplicates the layer below, but I will change it because we already have reticulation. And I want halftone effects here, which will be in the form of dots. We will increase the size of the dots. As we can see with a bit more contrast, it creates small dots, a bit like screen printing if you know it. And that's where we see the benefit of the reticulation underneath. It allows this dot effect to fade. If I remove it, we can clearly see the screen printing effect of the small dots. There you go. We will redisplay reticulation, and here we can see that all our dots are well degraded. So if we reduce the density a bit, we allow the degraded effect to be preserved, but not too much. I will increase the size a tiny bit. There, a bit more contrast, so that it's much more rough. We will add another effect called torn edge, which will enhance the edges more roughly. There, we will increase the smoothness. It allows the edges to be really defined and to make something very pixelated. Once again, we will focus on the details starting from the next layer because I will add another effect. I will add another halftone effect. So the little plus will add an effect, but this time it will be a circle, and we will increase the size of the circle. There, we will look for something much more defined. And for that, we will adjust the effects in between. The following adjustments will depend on your visual and your tastes. So I will let you have fun and create the effect you like the most. I'll see you after a little video acceleration. When we are satisfied with our effect, we will click OK. We can see that the eye of our creature is well centered and that the circle effect starts from its eye. Now, we will right-click and convert to a smart object. If we don't do this, when we manipulate it, the effect we created previously will automatically change, which is not what we want. So once we have converted to a smart object, we will Ctrl plus C on the layer and return to our workspace to Ctrl plus V. Then Ctrl plus T. We will reduce it and make sure by reducing its opacity to bring it back to the same size as the image below, approximately. Here, we have our two images and our two effects. What I would like is to create a mix of my two layers and make sure that our animal is more visible while retaining the vibration effect we created. I will start by moving this layer above the other. I will hide the one below. Still, with the first one selected, I will go to Select Color Range, select Black, which will allow me to select only the black color. Click OK and create a mask at the bottom right. So as we can see, it allowed me to select only the black of the image. I will redisplay my shapes. What I will do with my brush and selecting my mask is I will redisplay the white areas inside the shape of my wolf. And so if I use a white brush, as we can see, I can erase the effect in the places where I want it to stand out a bit more. So like earlier with X, it allows me to switch between black and white colors, which will enable me to erase my layer. So here, we will leave a bit of the effect. It can be nice, so it will be up to us to erase the areas we want to keep or not. It's more a question of taste and aesthetics. We will still try to avoid overloading the visual with effects so that we can clearly discern the main character. I will speed up the process a bit. As you can see, it's not very exciting for you. I speed up the video and will get back to you when I have made the visual as nice as possible. Perfect. I like it like that. So next, we're gonna do another manipulation. I would still like our main subject to stand out a bit from our circle effect. As we can see, it has stuck a bit too much in places. But overall, the effect makes our subject too embedded for my taste. We're gonna add a bit of thickness to our animal. I'll take the top layer, the base shape, duplicate it, mask the ones below, and delete its layer. As we can see, it's on a white background, which I'm not interested in. I want us to have the visual cut out while keeping the white and black. Let's try with Select, then Subject, to see if Photoshop can find it. And indeed, it did a good job, but we can see that some areas are missing. We'll rework that, so we'll create a mask from the selection made, and we can see that there are still transparent areas. I'll go to my mask, and with a brush, we'll use the white brush to recreate material where it was removed. There. The goal is not to do it very precisely. Again, our visual has a very raw and rough render, so we won't dwell too much on the details like revealing the teeth. Because what I have in mind is to create an outline of our shape, and the edges need to be well defined, which is our priority. So here, if we look a bit, we have everything selected. I'll show everything again. I'll move this layer below my other layer. I'll double-click it to open the Layer Style panel and add a stroke. Set it to outside mode and increase its size. As we can see, we're adding a slight thickness. About this size seems right. Okay, so here it stands out a bit, but I don't want it to stand out everywhere to preserve the earlier effect. What we'll do is convert this layer to a smart object. Create a mask over it. And using my brush, we'll erase the areas we want to reveal again, as we did earlier. So here, very roughly, we'll work on it. And here it is. Not too bad. It's a slight detail, but it has some importance. So for me, from this point, we finished the main effect. We'll rework it afterward, but for now, I have about what I want. I'll select all my layers, right-click, transform into a smart object, and there we go. We can move on to the next step, the composition of our poster, adding meaning, making sure all the graphic elements align with the subject and theme we've defined. I remind you, the theme is aggressiveness, impact, hate, fear, danger. I want the beast to stand out more in our visual, to stare us down and give the impression it's about to attack us. So we're going to do some composition work, and to make our creature really the centerpiece of our visual, we'll frame it. With the rectangle tool, shortcut key U, I'll select a black outline at the top left and draw a frame by clicking and holding the left mouse button with my rectangle. Now I automatically get rounded corners. We can use the small white circle to shrink it, or directly type 0 pixels in the box right here. We'll try to position our rectangle better, so I'll click on it, do a Ctrl+T, and let's say we'll place this rectangle behind the 3 ears and at the teeth level. Something like this. I'll also resize my subject with the Shift key pressed. So the enlargement is uniform, and we'll place it like this. Now, what we can do is erase the excess of our main subject so it fits inside the rectangle. What I propose is to click on the layer of our subject, press the W key for the quick selection tool, and try to quickly select our main subject. Like this. Then we'll create a mask and fill the rectangle here. With a Ctrl plus left click on the image of our layer, which will create a full selection area in the shape of our rectangle. Then click on our mask and simply press the delete key, which, as we can see here, applied white to the selection on our mask. I'll go back to my rectangle and set a transparent background, and now we can see the background directly. We'll go back to our layer, and with the brush tool, we'll rework the cutout a bit. Same here. I'll speed up the video because it's not very interesting for you to watch me cut out. Here it is. Now we're going to go back to our rectangle. Similarly, we'll apply a mask and cut it out where it intersects with our main subject. This will make the tooth stand out a bit. And here we're going to do it along the outline, like this. So here, this allows us to create, let's say, a context, a box, having a sort of illusion, as if the creature is going to come out of the frame of our visual. This will be the main composition of our visual. I'm going to select everything and enlarge it a bit like this, and position it roughly here. Now we're going to start adding some context with title elements for our poster that correlate with our main subject and the theme we've chosen. For this, I'm going to start by choosing a title. But first, I'm going to group our main subject. I'm going to call it Subject. This will make navigation easier. So as I was saying, I'm going to create a title with the text tool. By pressing T, we can click and start creating a title here. I think we'll go with something like Hostility. However, I don't like the font. We need something a bit more impactful, something that really catches the eye and is quite broad. I think this one will do. I'll simply enlarge it with Ctrl plus T and manually increase its size like this. We might even exaggerate a bit more. This is not typically recommended with some fonts, but this one lends itself well to it. Distortion is generally not advised for standard fonts, as it can degrade character quality. But here, we have an exception. Okay, now I'm going to put the font below the other layers, and, as we can see, we lose the outline of our main subject. I'm going to try double-clicking on our subject group to open layer styles and add a stroke. Here, it's on the outside, and we can increase its thickness like this. This way it's not too bad. It helps to separate the subject from our text. If the stroke looks rough in some areas, just go back to our main subject and with a brush, erase a little bit in the jagged areas. That's pretty good. Another small thing we can add is another threshold effect to pixelate the visual. Right-click on our threshold layer and create a clipping mask inside it. This ensures everything is well pixelated and there are no blurry areas. This also allows us to add some thickness to the visual elements if needed. This allows for some slight adjustments here, and it looks pretty good. Okay, one thing that bothers me immediately with the typography is that the dot on the I is not detached. I would prefer it to be like a lowercase I, which would make the title easier to read since it's hidden behind the main subject. I think I'll simply use the rectangle tool, remove its stroke, and fill it with solid white above the layer. We'll try to make it logically the same thickness as the bar of the T. Again, I'll remove the round corner and place it at the same height, like this. Now, we have a more readable I. Finally, I think we'll reduce its height to a line. Perhaps this will be a bit more stylized. Let's try basing it on the height of the S to keep something coherent. And once that's done, I do a left click, Ctrl plus Shift, hold it down, and move my rectangle along the same axis as the other one, which saves time and maintains coherence. And here, the title is more readable. What I'll do is select my 3 title layers, create a group, name it Title. This way, we can keep track of everything. Okay, so now we have a title. I think I'd like to decorate it a bit more. To do this, something that would look good and be coherent with our visual would be to use some vector shapes I've made into a pack that you can download for free. These are tribal shapes. There are 400 available for download. I'll put the link in the description. So among my 400 vectorized shapes, I'm going to import one that I really like. This one interests me because the top part is well developed and will intertwine nicely with the typography. Once imported, I'll place it above our title layer like this. I'll double-click on it and apply a stroke to make it stand out from the background. But I'll apply it in black, reduce it a bit, and you'll see right away. We'll set it to white with a color overlay. This adds some space and white to the visual, while maintaining a very raw style. I'll come and move it. We can have fun stretching it however we want with Ctrl plus T. Let's try to center it. There, that looks pretty good. What I'm really interested in here is just the area around the title. So using the rectangle selection tool, shortcut key M, I'll select just the area of our title like this, and on our tribal shape layer, I'll apply a mask. This way, we have the tribal shape over our title and only within our title. We can play with the perspective between this shape and the title to make it more interesting and playful. I'll duplicate my text layer, placing it above the tribal shape at the bottom right. Click on a mask and then use our brush to erase the areas to reveal our tribal shape. There, like this. It looks like it's passing through the top and the bar of the H. This way, it breaks up the title a bit, making it less visible but adding a nice style, as if roots are intertwined with the text. It's like this sentiment is rooted in the visual, in hostility and hatred. You get the idea. I'll add a small filled rectangle with a similar thickness. Remove the angle. Stretch it up to here with this thickness. Make it pass below the rest. We'll give it roughly the same thickness as here. If you want to be sure, you can draw a second rectangle of the same height. This helps adjust the spacing precisely. There, now we have the same spacing. It doesn't seem perfectly aligned with the edge. We'll do the same here, selecting just the end. This compresses the title a bit, but makes everything stand out more. We can play with the typography here by writing something. Using T for text, I'll select here and choose a more classic font. Roboto, very linear, maybe regular, not too thick. Italic could be nice. Reduce its size and write something like, "Illusion of the anger beast, an inescapable and deep torment." We'll split this sentence to spread it across the top of the text. I'll duplicate my layer and, for example, remove this part of the sentence for the layer that goes on the far right. I'll select and delete just the text. We'll create a central element here. What goes with the notion of danger? Maybe prohibition, something repulsive. A cross could work well. I'll open Illustrator to make a pixelated cross using the rectangle tool, key M, and holding down Shift, I'll draw a square. To make a cross, I'll duplicate it by holding Alt plus Shift and moving it diagonally until it touches the other square. Instead of repeating this, I'll use the Ctrl plus D shortcut to duplicate the last action along the same axis 3 times in total to form the cross. Select everything, press R, and while holding Alt plus Shift, rotate it symmetrically. Now we have our cross duplicated. Select everything, Ctrl plus C to copy, go back to Photoshop, and Ctrl plus V to paste. Resize and center our cross in the visual. It might be nice to have 2 more crosses. Duplicate using Shift plus Alt, Ctrl plus T to resize proportionally while holding Shift. This way, it's not too bad. Duplicate on our side like this. The square below is in the way, so create a mask on our rectangle layer, press M, select the area, and use the brush to erase inside. Now, I'll spread out my typography for readability. It could look nice spread across each corner of our tribal shape. Reduce the size to 8. Go back to the type and manually space it using the spacebar. This is quick and doesn't require further adjustments once defined. Do the same here. Select the layer, align at the bottom. Now they're in the same place. Start here, the same distance, and use the spacebar several times. Let's put the last word here like this. And there you go. That way we've defined the top a bit. I'm gonna slightly move my points. Like this. And here we have, let's say, a subtitle to our title, which is on top, and decorative elements around it. I'll select everything and align it. Select everything with Ctrl plus T and move everything to the top. There you go, like this. So we can say that we have more or less defined the top of our visual. I'm asking myself if we shouldn't slightly expand our main subject to make it more impactful, since there's too much empty space on the sides. So I'm going to select my main subject, and with the Shift key held down, we'll expand it a bit. This will require us to redo the manipulation, but it might be nicer. I'll spare you this and speed it up. And so, our central subject is now much more visible and prominent. It takes up more space in our visual, increasing the impact. And I think the gaze will be well centered on the animal's eyes. So we'll leave it like this. Okay, now we'll take care of the bottom part. For this part, we'll crop it again with a bit of text, I think, here. And I suggest making something coherent, like those danger ribbons placed by either the police or firefighters at a restricted or dangerous area. It could be nice to create a small graphical reminder of that here, passing under the animal as if it were dangerous itself, surprising us with this ribbon. So let's start. We'll use Illustrator, take the rectangle tool, and draw a rectangle. Once we have the right size, we'll press the A shortcut to open the direct selection tool to select only the bottom. And with the Shift key held down, we can move and space out our rectangle. Once that's done, we'll select it, hold down Shift, and move our rectangle to the side. And like before, do several Ctrl plus D commands. We can shrink it a little like this, and then we'll play with it in Photoshop. We'll import it and position it at the jaw level. Then stretch and distort it as we want. Something like this. I'm not too fond of it. We'll stretch it further. I think it's too much. So let's double-click on it. This will open it directly in Illustrator. But this time, when we do Ctrl plus S to save in Illustrator, it will automatically update in Photoshop. I think I've moved it too much, so I'll select everything at the top and shift it with the Shift key held down. And I think I added too many shapes, so I'll remove that number. There, deleted, and I'll do a Ctrl+S. Once it's saved, it should update in Photoshop. We'll stretch it a little more like this. And I think it looks good. This graphic element, representing a danger ribbon during an intervention, helps recall the circular repetitive shapes from the top and symbolizes the danger of the scene. I'd like to add a bit more text here, still consistent with our subject. I'll simply select with T for text. We'll add text here and write, "Within darkness, anger, bitter embrace." And we'll style it like this. I think I ultimately want it in bold italic, but it's a bit too thick. Medium italic is better. Now, just like before, I'll split the phrase into two by duplicating it and adding spaces. I'll select my two texts. We'll move them here equidistantly from the two shapes. The same for continuing with the straight and horizontal aspects of our visual. I'll duplicate the top line like this and place it here. I've removed the mask and will create a new one. Using a brush, we'll erase like this the parts we're not interested in. Okay, there you go. It provides a small continuity in the reading and the line of sight like this. It's a bit empty here and here. If we select everything, there you can see that we could add a small element or two here. I was thinking of a star with sharp angular points. We'll create the shape in Illustrator. We have it directly here with the shortcut M, but we'll click and hold left here. We have the star tool we can select. So if we do this, we get a star shape directly. But it's not the kind of star I'm interested in. I think I want a four-pointed star, so I'll simply hold down the Alt key. A left click will open the star panel where we'll select 4 points for the number of branches we want. And here's a four-pointed star. With the A key, we can select only the points here. And with the S key and the Shift key held down, we can reduce the angle of our star like this. We select our shape, press the R key, and we can move our shape around. Once again, we'll hold down the Alt key to duplicate the shape, while also holding the Shift key to make sure it's perfectly aligned on the same axis. Once it's set, I'll press the S key, and with the Shift key held down, we'll slightly scale down the shape. We'll take it, copy it, and import it directly into Photoshop. Then position it where I want it, like this, at the edges. We'll finish the bottom part. We'll add an element that also echoes our theme. I was thinking of some sort of mark, something that conveys the idea of anger and explosiveness. I think a kind of stain, like an ink blot, would be quite fitting. I already have one vectorized. You can also find one online, where you find an image of a stain and vectorize it directly in Illustrator. I'll import it just like the other shapes. This will add something a bit less geometric and more organic. It will symbolize a blood stain under the beast, as if there had been an outburst, a big stain, something a bit messy. Now, I'd like to fill in a bit. Here, I think a small text area would be nice, like a poem to illustrate the visual. So I'll add text here. We'll align it a bit like this. There we go. What's nice is that from a distance, this small text still resonates with the somewhat messy shapes around the creature. Here, I'd add a second title that reinforces the message, echoing the little poem that's there. I'll show you how to create a nice title with a gradient. So we'll start at the top with text. I'll write anger. We'll increase its size. And I'd like a rather stylized, somewhat gothic typography. Something like this. It's nice. It's both organic and very fine and sharp at the same time. It references the entire visual, as we can see with the teeth, ears, and tribal elements, thick and thin as we have here, with fine lines and very thick areas. I'd place it under my stain. There we go. And we'll add an effect to avoid it being too dark underneath. So I'll double click on my text layer to open the layer style. I'll add a gradient. Here, by clicking on gradient, a panel will open, and we'll already have some examples. We'll take a black and white gradient. Like this, we'll invert it so that it comes from the bottom. We'll also add a black color thickness, of course, a bit thicker, but not too much, to make it fade from the center. This looks good. I'll go back to my gradient and move the white color a bit further up to make the white rise and lower the black color slightly by selecting the small square. There we go. That will accentuate my gradient a bit. Like this, it seems quite good. My title is somewhat hidden behind, which is a bit nicer. It avoids immediate reading and adds more composition to the bottom of my visual. Now, we'll finish up the corner here. I was thinking of doing something like a barcode and adding a small reminder of the wolf, like a small stamp, something a bit stylized. I'll import a second image of the wolf, which is a bit different. Resize it and position it here. And, like before, we'll apply a threshold effect and use a clipping mask to include it only in the layer. Then we'll adjust it a bit like this. I'll select everything and reposition it here. I'll add something that still resonates with anger and hostility, like something fiery, a burning flame, and a bit tribal in style. For that, I have a second vector shape pack available for free download. I'll include the link in the description. These are hand-drawn organic flames that we'll place at this level. We'll position them under the wolf. I'll outline the wolf to keep only the black, and do the same for my flame. So I'll convert it into a smart object. That way, we only have that shape. Double-click on the layer to reopen the layer style. We'll add a white color this time and reduce the thickness a bit to make it more subtle. We'll bring back our wolf and try to adjust everything. With Ctrl+T, I'll distort the flames. There, like this. We can go back to the wolf layer to reveal some details here. We won't bother recreating an ear. We'll make it ourselves by erasing the area like this. Now I'd add another cross, a diagonal one here, behind our wolf. With the rectangle tool, we'll create a small line like this, remove the rounded corners, and use Ctrl+T to place it like this. I'll duplicate it, and there we have our cross. I think we'll reduce it a bit to make it less prominent. Maybe stretch it a bit. I'd like the flame to stand out a bit more. We'll double-click and add a small drop shadow here, adjusting its opacity, distance. I want it very close, not too big, stretched not too much, and at 90 degrees. Like this. Alright, we're going to move it down a bit so it's not too prominent at the top. We'll reduce its size and opacity. There we go. This creates a subtle effect that makes it stand out. I think we'll add the same effect to the title as well. This way, it helps bring our elements back into focus a bit. To finish here, I think I'll add a small barcode, maybe a bit more text as well. Similarly in Illustrator, We can create a barcode simply with the rectangle tool, duplicating our shapes, and using S and Shift while resizing them to create a somewhat random pattern. Copy, and we paste it directly here. It's way too large. Of course, we'll resize it. There we go, perfect. Let's move it back to the center. Then I'll add some text here. We'll make it all uppercase. Using the same font, we won't italicize it. I'll reduce its size. We'll increase its spacing and make it bold. Indeed, we'll enlarge the font. I'll reposition everything. And we'll finish by adding my little personal signature, my little smiley. I think it looks good here. We'll add a subtle thickness to it. A final small element I'd add here is to create a little reference to the tribal pattern at the top. I think it somewhat hides the text, and, like the one at the top, it will give a little stylized touch. I'll set it to white and use a slightly thicker black stroke. Not bad. Well, here's the final composition of my visual. To finalize this project, I'd add some decorative elements, but this time, not graphic. More colors and textures. So first, we'll add some color. We'll use the gradient map adjustment layer for this. It allows us to define the gradient color over the entire visual. Here, I definitely want something red and black like we saw in the previous inspirations. So let's go for it. From now on, it's going to lack a bit of texture. For that, I'll import a texture I had saved. It's a piece of paper I scanned myself. I'll copy it and paste it over everything, and we'll distort it to fit the size of our visual. Like this. We'll place it above our layers and change its blending mode. We want a slight gradient effect to darken our overall visual a bit. I think linear burn is the right compromise. Now we can lock it by clicking on the little lock icon, so it won't be selected during further adjustments. After a few tweaks to rearrange my elements, I've decided to add a texture similar to the one at the bottom of the visual that seems too empty. To do this, I will use the layer of our creature, and since we have turned it into a smart object, we can go back and see the effect we applied in the filter gallery. To do this, simply double-click on the layer image of our smart object. Once we've found the correct layer, we'll double-click on the filter gallery effect to open it and modify it as we wish. Since I only want to use the circular part of my effect, we'll ignore the central visual and focus on creating smaller shapes here. So we'll play with effects to choose the one that suits you best. It's a bit of DIY from now on. I'll leave you to play with your layers to create the visual you like most. I'll stop here. We'll take our layer and place it at the very bottom to modify it. I'll add a mask and use a slightly large and fine brush to create small, scattered areas. Then we'll add a threshold effect on top to enhance the gradient of our layer. And we'll continue to work a bit with my brush. Feel free to change brush types to best customize your effect. The final result is a bit grunge and worn. I'll make some final touches on the elements at the bottom. And we'll be almost done. From here, for me, the visual is mostly finished. What I'll do is select all my layers, put them in a group. That way, everything is in one place. I also like to duplicate this group. Hide the group below, right-click, convert the group to Smart Objects, then Ctrl+A and Ctrl+C and Ctrl+V to select, copy, and paste our layer. Then we'll convert it back to a smart object and delete the one below. To finish, I'll give you a little tip to create a 3D effect to make our poster look more realistic. It's very simple. We'll start by adding a black background. Then we'll apply a very easy 3D effect. I'll show you. We'll double-click to open the Layer Style panel and adjust the bevel and emboss effect. This will add a gradient of white at the top and a bit of black as light, which will give some depth to our visual. So you can increase its size and choose its angle. I like to start with an angle in the top left. There you go. I'll let you make your own adjustments as you see fit for your creation. I chose to do it in red, but just add a saturation layer, and you can see what it might look like in other colors. Some colors like azure stand out well, and lemon green isn't too bad. Fuchsia is also nice. Anyway, that's it for this tutorial. You now know how to create a visual in the Brutalism graphic style from A to Z. If you liked it, feel free to let me know in the comments. Don't forget that you can download free vector shape packs, including organic flames and tribal shapes that I've specially created for you. Leave me a comment if you learned something, or if you'd like me to show you how to create a specific type of design. I wish you happy creating, and I'll see you in the next episode of Design with Me. Keep creating and enjoy.